It's almost time to start pouring some concrete, but first I need to confirm that all of the parts fit properly and then seal everything up. I have the base of the form on my Lazy Susan that I used for painting, which should make things much easier to assemble. Now a quick review of the parts. I already have the plug for the faucet installed. Next to it is the plug that forms the hole for the sink. Around the perimeter is the cove that will form a lip around the sink, helping keep water from dripping off the edges. Around this back edge is the cove I formed with wood. I bumped it and damaged this corner, which I'm going to try to repair with some epoxy. And this is the plug that will form a drain on the surface of the counter, directing water into the sink. And now for my first attempt at full assembly. I used dowels to locate all of the components, so all I need to do is tap them in place with a hammer and then install the screws. I guessed that the order should be front, then sides, then back, but later found out that this is not the best order, and that's why we practice. I did not use any dowels to index the back, and that was an error because it is very difficult to get lined up properly. There are a handful of screws that go up into the base, and at this point is where I determined that the sides go on last. Sorry for being off camera, but these videos were recorded vertically and then rotated. This project was one of the first I recorded and did not understand the problems with vertical video. At this point of the assembly, it would be time to start placing the concrete. The concrete will be filled up to the top surface of the sink plug, and then I will drop in the anchor screw jig and then the form for the walls. I am skipping installation of the anchor screw jig for this practice assembly, so first I need to insert the plugs for the leg anchor bolts into the form for the walls. These plugs were printed on my 3D printer, and this is the first time I've attempted to install them, and I found the holes are just a little bit too small. These plugs need to easily slide in and out of the holes. The upper form indexes into the base form with dowel pins on each end of the braces. Then each of the anchor bolt plugs need to be pulled out and inserted into the holes in the sides. Then I'm ready to fill up the rest of the form with concrete. Here is the sink anchor bolt jig that has not yet been fully assembled. I have wing nuts glued to the end of the stainless steel screws that will be inset into the concrete. The wing nuts should prevent the screw from rotating. Before assembling the jig, I need to calculate how far I want the wing nuts to be inset into the concrete. Now that I know everything fits, it is time to take it all apart, repair the cove, and get it all sealed up. Here's my fix for that very fragile cove. Using my 3D printer, I created two parts to form a mold. The one on the bottom is forming the flat edge, and the one on the top forms the curved edge of the cove. The bottom is screwed to the form, then I dripped epoxy adhesive in the gap and placed the other one on top. Now it is time to take them off and see what happened. I used blue masking tape to keep the epoxy from sticking to the forms. This is a knife edge, and I need to be careful because it's very easy to damage. Now, using my calibrated finger for testing, I do not feel an edge between the wood and the epoxy, so I think it was a success. A little light sanding top and bottom, and it'll be ready to go. The first coat of resin is on, and as I expected, it raised the grain and left a rough surface. This will require some sanding and another coat. Due to the small surface area, I used boxing tape to seal the sides and ends. It is much easier to apply and does not have to wait to dry. Due to the complicated surface structure, the back section of the form will be sealed with the polyester resin. I sprayed the anchor bolt jig with polyurethane to seal it because not so concerned about the surface quality. Going to wait another day to ensure everything is dry and hard before sanding and applying the second coat of resin. Here is the lower form base after sanding the first coat. Zooming in, we can see all the low spots which remain darker than the surface that was sanded. And here are all my sanding tools for this job. Now, can anybody answer this question? The polyester resin did not fully harden over the epoxy repair, and the same anomaly occurred with the resin over the knots in the form for the legs. Anybody know what causes that? I used cheap throwaway brushes to apply the resin and had numerous brush hairs fall off and contaminate the surface, so I'm going to use a foam brush for the next coat. Here you can see the defect left when one of the hairs were sanded off, leaving a tiny valley. The foam brush worked well, but I lost that video. Everything is now sealed, and it is time for one more practice assembly. And over here we can see all of the formed rebar that's going to help hold this thing together. We'll place about 1 inch of concrete and then put in all the rebar before filling it up. I determined that I need to install the back part of the form when the base is upside down, so now, time to get it flipped over. Once I had it flipped over, I found that there was a significant ridge where the Cove mates with the backsplash, and I'm going to need to sand that down using my oscillating tool. And here that tonto gets in the way of the camera again. I had to be very careful while sanding because that is a very delicate edge. Now, while installing the back, I have no idea why I did not think to add locating dowels at this point. Now we have the form right side up again. Earlier I determined that the front and back should go on first and then the sides, and now it's time to see if I was right. While tightening the screws, I am also inspecting for any gaps, ensuring everything will seal correctly. Woohoo! There are 2 lengths of rebar that go into the backsplash, and I'm going to need to figure out a way to suspend them so that they do not sink when the form is vibrated. And here is the fully assembled anchor bolt jig, and you can see how that they will be suspended into the concrete. Once the bottom half of the form is filled, then this jig is set on top of the sink plug, holding the studs into position while the concrete sets. I was going to use a screw to hold it down, but decided that it's not going to be necessary. Next, I'm putting in the upper form for the walls, but here I caught myself in an error, forgetting to install the leg screw plugs. Now this is why we practice. Crap.
No!
Broke a plug and now have to print another, but first I'm going to finish the assembly to make sure nothing else is wrong. Here is the fully assembled form minus the broken pin. We'll have to take it apart and reassemble using latex caulk on all the joints, and it's going to be ready for concrete.